I want to welcome everyone to the first planning meeting of the 30th annual Walkathon hosted by LifePath here in Greenfield. I'm Carol Foote, the Outreach and Development Director at LifePath, and I want to welcome our committee members today who are able to join us. We are recording this session because others are not able to join us or may join us a little later. But in the case that anyone wants to hear our conversation, see where we started from, that they can access this recording at their leisure after the fact. So thank you all for joining and being willing to be with us to plan the 30th annual Walkathon for LifePath. It is an event that has gone through many changes over the years, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But where I would like to start is to have you as members of this committee introduce yourself and talk about, just share your connection to LifePath and what are your reasons for wanting to be involved in this planning group. So I'll call on you so we don't kind of do that stumbling around. So Jim, you're on my left here. So why don't you go ahead and start?
You're muted.
Remember to unmute, please.
How sinister. I'm on your left. I'm Jim Geisman. I'm the treasurer of LifePath, and been on the board for, I don't know, 4 years, maybe, something like that. And I live in Greenfield, and for my real job, I do not do nonprofit consulting, which is called mentoring.
Nice. We'll expect some mentoring in this group, Jim. Thank you for being with us. Judy, you're up next, please.
I'm Judy Funch. I'm a retired social worker. I've been on the board for 17 years. I live in Leverett, and I'm, interested in participating because it's such an important part of what we do. The problem for me is I haven't attended many walkathons because it's the same day as Leverett Town Meeting. So I've only been a few times. This year I promise to miss Leverett Town Meeting regardless of what's happening, if it's the same date.
We won't hold you to that, Judy, but
okay.
we appreciate the gesture for sure. Thank you. Charity.
I'm Charity Day. I am the Associate Director of Client Services at LifePath. And the reason that the Walkathon is important to me is not only because it supports the Meals on Wheels program, but it supports the individuals that we work with that there's just no other funding source for, because sometimes just a small amount of money can really make a difference in someone's life.
Excellent reasoning. And thank you for what you do, Charity, and for being with us. Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Maynard. I live in Whately. And for 20 years, I was the assistant director at Highland Valley Elder Services. And during that time, we did do 2 walkathons. And then a new executive director decided not to move forward with that fundraising. So I understand the challenges of doing a walkathon. I've never actually participated with LifePath's, but would like to support and know that a lot can happen in the planning phases, which is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nancy. And Ann Kaczynski, please.
Hi, I'm Ann. I work in the nutrition department here at LifePath. I've been there for about 5 years now. I was a volunteer ombudsman many years ago for LifePath. That was my first get to know LifePath, and I absolutely loved it. And that while I worked at Cooley Dickinson, and I was able to get a position in the nutrition department about 5 years ago when one opened, and I thought it would be nice to be able to work in my own community. But the Walkathon is very special to me, and so is Meals on Wheels. That's why I actually took this job. My mom was on Meals on Wheels in Berkshire County, and she fell several times and was found by Meals on Wheels drivers. And so it always held a special place in my heart. And now I'm just glad I can give back to LifePath and the Meals clients. And everything that Charity said, we need funding for so many other programs besides Meals on Wheels. This is a great way to do it, and a great way to bring our community into LifePath and show them what LifePath offers. So that's why I want to be part.
That's awesome. And thank you, Anne. And what I'll say about Anne is that they had awesome nutrition booths at the last in-person walkathon. And there were games and there were prizes and there was spirit and super fun. So Anne is an awesome addition to this committee because she's very creative. She pulls in her husband too to put his skills to work. And so we're so pleased to have you as part of the planning committee, Anne. So thank you. So what I thought we would do first is I'm going to share my screen and we are going to, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So planning for the 30th annual Walkathon, which put on your calendar right now, Saturday, May 7th, 2022, because that's when it's all going down. I mean, up, I mean, whatever. We're excited about, the prospect of being in person again this year. So hopefully that's how it will be. And that is how we will move forward, probably with, some asterisks here and there, just saying, well, what would we do if we, had to go virtual again? Because we have practice in that now. Yes,
I'm
Jim.
sorry, what date was that?
I'm sorry.
Saturday, the 21st?
May 7th, the first Saturday in
Oh,
May.
okay.
And
Thank you.
don't put it on your calendar wrong, Jim. Come on.
Now, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Thank
Good.
you.
Excellent. So yeah, we went back to the first Saturday in May, which it had been, I guess, for years and years and years. And I'm not sure why it got pushed into April, but when we were discussing, dates at whatever point, it felt like, oh gosh, if we had a little extra warmth that May might be able to provide, that could be helpful because, I mean, in May, certainly you can have all kinds of weather too, but April, it felt like, oh, it could be hail, it could be snow, it could be, or a greater likelihood of that. So I did want to offer a little bit of a background for LifePath for those members of the committee who may be joining us along the way, maybe a little later. Maybe there are people we don't know yet who are interested in joining. But just wanted to give that background on LifePath that, we were founded in 1974 as Franklin County Home Care and charged with managing programs and services that extend the independence of those age 65 and older, individuals with disabilities and caregivers. And those programs and services that were a much smaller offering at that point in our beginnings grew into the more than 40 currently offered. And we had been housed at the Farron and Turner's for a number of years and have moved here to 101 Munson Street, we think around 2016, so fairly recently. And around that same time, the name was changed from FCHC to LifePath. So just wanted to give sort of those big bullet points as far as, who we are, what we do, what we used to be called, how people know us now. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that as kind of a overview about what LifePath's, who they serve, what we do. Fair assessment. Keep moving. So a little bit of background on the Walkathon was that it was started in 1992. So as a fundraiser solely for Meals on Wheels. And it was a program that had a great deficit. And so the Walkathon was dreamed up to close the gap for the Meals on Wheels program. And it has been hosted in a number of places, the Turners Falls High School track, the County Technical School track at the Greenfield Community College grounds, and most recently here at LifePath, as well as virtually. As far as locations or anything broader than that, that's been sort of the biggest change over those many years until a little more recently, which we'll get into that.
I have a question for Anne. I don't know if she knows the answer, but I realized when you were talking about the financial issues and why it started, I'm curious how, if you know, Anne, and you may not, how Yeah, I know that we bill people and we get some money back. And I'm just curious if you have any sense of how that has gone through the pandemic.
Most of our income through donations, what we call our pinks, that come through fiscal, have continued through the pandemic. A wide range of people who just donate every month to people sending us a $5 bill in the mail because that's all they have left at the end of the month. It's not, I don't believe the revenue is as much as it used to be before pandemic. But there's still, I think that the monthly statements that we send out are very well received, and we do receive quite a few of them back.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
One other inspiring thing I'll add to Anne's comments. I had a donor call, wanted to be anonymous. And he said, you know, how do I make a donation? I want to support the Meals on Wheels program. And so I gave him a couple of different ways. He could send in a check, he could go online, he could, you know, and I think he wrote it in his, you know, gift that he has a friend who receives Meals on Wheels, and that person doesn't, you know, give to the program, but that he wanted to give for him, kind of a thing. And it was a gift of over $1,000, you know? So it's pretty amazing how that program touches, you know, not just the consumers and their caregivers, but, you know, people who are 1 or 2 degrees away from, you know, the people who are actually receiving the services too. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And in some ways, I feel like it is unfortunate that we've moved away from, you know, Meals on Wheels being that the recipient, but over these many years, we have found that we've gotten more funding, or that, you know, prices of reimbursements have increased, grant monies have come in. I mean, there was a lot for nutrition that came through the COVID relief funding, and so you know, we're not in a worse place, and we're not looking to, you know, go back to it being solely Meals on Wheels. But if Meals on Wheels or nutrition was in a position to need funding, this money could go there too. You know, so it's not that it's exclusive of the nutrition program and everything else gets funded. Everything, you know, can benefit from what's raised through the Walkathon. So just wanted to make that point clear. So just, you know, the nuts and bolts of how the Walkathon runs in bullet points. You know, so much of this event happens before the event day, and you know, another thing that Anne is involved in. And I'll say, I'm still going to say Elm Street Ambulators, because Anne has a team called the Elm Street Ambulators, but this year it was a little less teamy. But she still did an awesome job raising funds. So she's got that insight too, being a really strong team captain, and you know, knowing the ins and outs of how to make a successful run at the fundraising, for sure. So before the event day, of course, we're securing sponsors, we're securing teams, you know, through mailings and some follow-ups. So much of it is electronic these days. But Judy, I think you had an excellent point in the last year that, you know, maybe sponsors didn't receive our mailing because people weren't in their places where we usually send things to them. And so that was something that I know I wasn't thinking about, which is why I need this think tank in the year to come to say, how do we need to think about this a little bit differently? How can we follow up and use more of our people power to, you know, do great things in this 30th year? Team members fundraise in the months leading up to the event date and after, honestly. Materials are sent to previous walkers and fundraisers. Materials are sent to the Councils on Aging. Northfield Mount Hermon hosts a benefit concert for us, usually at the late February or early March. Related articles appear in The Good Life, which appear in inboxes because that electronic version goes out, but also in the Greenfield Recorder and the Athol Daily News. And our social media campaign happens mostly through Facebook in the 3 or so months leading up to the event. So any questions about those marching orders that we usually have ahead of time? And that would be for whether it is a virtual event or an in-person event, because we're trying to encourage that activity beforehand. Okay, so then if we are in person on event day, those activities have been streamlined. I do understand that this event used to be more, I don't want to say carnival-like, but there were definitely more pieces of interest happening on event day. But so for the standard event, there's walking, there's registration and t-shirts, there's the LifePath info booth, there's always donuts, apples, water, popcorn, and of course the volunteer help that day. And then the special things that I've witnessed or heard about through the years, there's been, for the kids, face painting, hula hooping, arts and crafts, performances from dance groups and musicians, display of vintage cars, and costumes. There used to be a costume contest. And so those things have kind of petered, or, not as much attention has been paid to those things. And I think what Lisa Middens shared was that, she tried to infuse a lot of activity, but it didn't actually bring in more money. So maybe there's another way that we can kind of think about how we might want to include or switch up, or, just consider different options. And then when we go virtual, we have the video that we're putting together, which does take a lot of time. And then the encouragement of the walking on the day of, but it feels way less exciting and engaging than, when we're actually able to be together. Any comments between the two? How, if you have heard anything or witnessed anything or experienced anything or had thoughts about, the difference between the two of them?
I thought that the virtual was extremely well done. I was very impressed by it. I think that, there is a lot to be said for being in person and making connections and stuff. I think that you probably get more buy-in from others. I'll second what Carol had said about the nutrition booth. They did a spin the wheel and get a question, and they did a lot of stuff, and I personally like that type of stuff. I'm I'm more of a in-person type of person, and trying to get, I know a couple of years ago we looked at doing some kids activities, and we've always done face painting, but trying to really get another get more people involved. And Carol and I had went to Bement and done a presentation, and we got students to attend, and they helped out and ate like 100 donuts, but they were there. And so I think that that's, something that, that's how we get the new donors to think about these things. And so I'm very excited, and I am hoping that we can do in person. But if not, we'll do virtual.
Thank you for that, Charity. I did just post in the chat the links where you can find the two virtual walkathons if you haven't enjoyed them yet. Don't do it now, but yeah, it definitely felt very different, because I had one regular walkathon with Lisa. No, without Lisa. The first year I worked here, I was the helper, and Lisa had to go at the very last, moment. And, I was left kind of managing the event. And I remember feeling like it wasn't until the Friday night before the very early Saturday morning that I maybe had a handle on what the heck was going to happen the next day. But it went off fine. It was, I think, our first year here at the, at 101 Munson Street. And lots of happy faces, people walking around the route, eating those donuts, visiting, so happy to see each other. And then the next year was when we had a regular year. 19 was a regular year. And then 2020 was when we were switching up. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but lots changed. So before I show you the next slide, I have to explain some things. So the way that the monies have been recorded over these handful of years that I'm aware of have been different. And let's flip to the next screen. I don't know how well you can see that, but maybe if I do this presenting, can you see that better? A little better. Okay, so I take you back to 2017, where we're reporting, that's the year before I got here, where we were reporting $101,694.22 as what was raised for the walkathon. And then also the first year I was here, $103,236. And then we dipped down. So as I took the helm, it was important to me to be pretty transparent about what monies we were counting. And in those $100,000 years, we were counting every coin that had come in that was Meals on Wheels related. So it maybe wasn't necessarily walkathon, but it was definitely Meals on Wheels. So you can see why we wanted to give like a big picture of what was brought in for that particular program. And I can appreciate that. But at the same time, I was feeling really uneasy about saying, this is walkathon, this is walkathon, this is walkathon, without really explaining that. And so in 2018, I suggested that we talk about it in the way that it's represented. So this is everything that's brought in over the year. This is what we've brought in through the walkathon. This is also what we brought in for the spring appeal. And so just kind of parsing that out a little bit for people who are watching us, because I thought it was important to be, like I said, transparent. And then as 2019, 2020, and 2021, those numbers really are strictly monies that it came in through the walkathon. So whether that was sponsorship, whether that was peer-to-peer fundraising, sometimes someone just sends in a walkathon donation, or the concert. So it was those elements that were involved in the other numbers, but the other numbers also had on all the other gifts that come in, of which there's about $30,000 in two major gifts that come in annually. So they have nothing to do with the walkathon, but they support Meals on Wheels. And so do you see where I'm trying to kind of, split it apart a little bit so that we really know what is at the heart of this event? So as we're looking at 2019, 2020, and 2021, and we're peeling back, to sort of the soul of this event, you can see that 65,000 was the height of, a year. And if you look at the 2018 and 2017, that we are in that pocket of 65 to maybe 72,000 that really could be attributed to, the event itself. And then Charity raised a hand.
I just have a question. So I know that I'm just wondering about expenses. So, and how that has worked out. And if you're going to get into that, I will save my question.
I wasn't really going to get into it, so it's perfectly great for you to ask the question right now. What I will share is that we have dialed back the expenses for sure, and definitely in the in the virtual years because we didn't even do t-shirts, which is something else I felt terrible about. But it was the whole thing like, do we mail them to people? Do we make them come out of their houses and have them pick them up? Do we, you know, it was kind of like, it didn't feel good to do that. So that's something we should be thinking about. You know, do we want to incorporate these last couple of years in whatever it is we do for a t-shirt, you know, provided that we're in person, dang it. And I would say that in the, you know, 17, 16, in that time frame, you know, expenses were up over, I want to say $10,000. And, you know, or maybe 18, 19, it was more like $6,000, $5,000. And with the last 2 virtual years, I mean, I don't know if we've broken a couple $1,000s in expenses, you know, just because we weren't doing lawn signs, we weren't doing t-shirts. You know, I think the t-shirts alone were a $3,000 endeavor on their own. The lawn signs were probably, I don't know, maybe $600 or $800. And then, you know, donuts are an expense. And so, you know, it starts to add up and you're creeping up over, you know, $5,000-6,000. But to put on an event, you know, where your expenses are, is it 10% of what you're, you know, kind of raising? You know, I think we have to decide what feels okay to us to kind of put out there to get back something, you know. So I don't know if that answered your question, Charity.
It did. I just, you know, yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think of, you know, I didn't know if this is after expenses or not, because
No,
I
this is
do
gross,
know.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do know that, like, I think I threw money at your husband and said, go get us more donuts. And, you know, I mean, it was like $60 or something. And of
Mhm.
course, you know, I didn't get, you know, I don't need the money back. It's not a huge, I'm just sort of thinking like you know, if we threw that, I can't imagine the other expenses. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I'm very frugal. So anybody's on this committee, you know, if you don't know that about me, and I'm willing to spend money. I'm not saying not spend money. I'm just sort of throwing that out there too.
We like frugal.
Okay.
But Carol, the signs and the t-shirts are really vital. I mean, I think that's one of the things, you know, not, you know, working in Franklin County. I mean, I would always see the signs for the walkathon for, you know, several weeks before, and it raised an incredible awareness. And then t-shirts raise that awareness after the fact, and people are wearing them everywhere for whatever they're doing. And, you know, it's just your, you know, perpetual moving forward with keeping LifePath in the forefront.
Yeah, thank you for that point. You know, we talked about doing lawn signs that would say the first Saturday of May so that we could, you know, reuse them. I mean, we have a stack of them in the closet. And like you said, I think it is great for visibility. We have our Meals on Wheels drivers put them out or deliver them to people, or, you know, ask people if they can put them on their lawn. You know, they're an excellent resource for us to be able to get them across Franklin County and the North Quabbin region, to be able to, you know, get that visibility, which is wonderful. And, you know, my husband's always wearing his t-shirt, like, so I totally get, you know, your points for sure. And I think with these last couple of years, when we were talking about, you know, do we want to do the lawn signs in that first year, it was like, people aren't getting out, you know, they're not going to see them. And is it an expense that we want to take on being virtual? And so we did make that decision to not do lawn signs the last couple of years, but it's a different year. It's 30 years. There's something to celebrate, I think, even if we do end up being virtual, because what we will look to be doing is encourage more teams, encourage more sponsors. You know, I wish there was a way that maybe, you know, we could, in January, which makes no sense at all, but hear me out, that we put out sort of a first rash of lawn signs, and we're doing you know, some sponsor work and trying to get, you know, those folks on board earlier. And then maybe there's a second rash of them. Maybe we do half as many, or, you know, I don't know what it is, but that we actually put the sponsor's logo onto the lawn signs, which gives them a little bit more visibility and gives us something more to kind of sell to them. And I know that, if you get this big on the lawn sign, that, it's not helpful to the sponsor's, wish to be seen. But just thinking about things a little bit differently, and how can we look more attractive as an event to, local businesses who are looking for that kind of recognition as well. So any other discussion around this, dollars and cents?
No, I think both lawn signs and t-shirts make sense regardless of what we're doing.
Great.
You better be careful with lawn signs, because I'm in the process of doing that because of this run for Board of Assessors. And, they're like $20 a piece. And, call it 25 if you get the wire frames that go with them. So I think you ought to have some sponsor money behind that so that they can use this as advertising, even though it's propped up by the Walkathon or the Ride-a-thon or the Meal-a-thon, whatever the hell it is.
I know I've got Jim working on something else. I don't remember them being quite that expensive, but
Well, these are this is single-sided sign, and you need two per. And that's what I'm paying through Vistaprint. But
okay.
In any event, if you're going to do it with sponsors, that means different signs, and
Yeah.
we got to work that out. Just another. I had a question though. I'm sorry to interrupt the flow of this. The NMH concert, how much effort does that take?
On our part, hardly any. I mean, we send out notification to, sort of a constant contact group. But it is all them. And, it feels like it should raise more than $1,000, because they do a wonderful job. And if we're there in person, it's a beautiful afternoon out. But it's all by donation. There's no ticket price or whatever. So, but what is amazing is that, this year it was a virtual concert. I think the year before we just got in under the wire and it was in person. Because it was like the very end of February or very early March. I can't remember which. So being virtual, it didn't really seem to affect. I know it did take longer. There was a longer time that people were sending gifts in, but people were very direct about, like, I'm giving because I participated in the concert, or, that kind of thing.
Do you think it? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, is there a suggested donation? I can't remember.
No.
But I was wondering, can we do it both virtually? Is it easy to do it virtually and in person this year? Because, I always think about the fact that many NMH students are long distance, so I want their parents' money. So wondered if that's a way to, if we did it virtually, can we get people who aren't close enough, or who don't, in that month of the year, it's not too pleasant to go out sometimes. So
Yep. I could ask for sure. I mean, they have the technology now. And so I'm an NMH parent right now, and they just had family days. And because of their worries around, bringing germs onto campus, they did keep a lot of the activities virtual, even though people were coming to campus. And so they did the same. They did the Vimeo concert for the performing arts, groups. And it was like the same kind of thing that they did for us for that concert. So they certainly still have the technology. They're still using it, and we could make that request.
Hey, Carol, I got a couple comments about signs from like different things I've seen from car shows and golf tournaments and whatnot.
Great.
One of the things that I see a lot is memorial signs at different events where you pay $100 or $150 and you get a memorial sign that goes in the ground on either a green or, around the outside of wherever you're doing. that we sell, and it would be a loved one, and they're the kind of the same sort of sign that, you know, like the Meals on Wheels signs are.
Mhm.
But that was a nice way of revenue. Kind of, we have to put the word out there so that they're available, but
Yeah.
we've seen those. Usually the sign has the person's name and photograph on there, and they're, you know, kind of big, but those are kind of nice and
Mhm.
a good way to make money. But the other thing is, I'm seeing a lot, like especially over here in Turner's for the Harvest Fest, they're reusing the same signs. They just put a little sticker over the existing date that was there.
Mhm.
And, you know, yeah, it might be only $500 that you save in a year, but it's still 500 is 500.
Mhm.
And the other thing, when you're talking about advertisers on the sign, instead of thinking maybe about all of the advertisers on the back of these signs, is maybe doing a individual advertiser on the backs of different signs in different places, so they're large and you can read them.
Mhm.
We've done that at different car shows as well.
That's great.
So
I just want to make sure I'm getting it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that these signs would be sponsored by single sponsors. And there may not be very many signs of that ilk. But we also have to be mindful of getting actually donations from the sponsors.
Well, and
Yeah.
I've had a hard time just sort of, I know usually, I think there's been one instance that a sponsor hasn't come through when they said they were going to. And despite my efforts, and and so I'm always a little bit nervous about going ahead with the materials and using their logo, just because, it feels like one bad apple spoils the bunch. Most people are, fine, and you can move forward and, not have the worry. But, there can be those situations where you feel like you want to have your money in your pocket before you, move forward with the promotion of them. But
Well, the way around that is, they have to pay up front, because the sign printer isn't going to wait for their money.
Yeah.
And that's just, they commit to $5,000, of which 250 go out for signs.
mhm. Yeah, and I'm always a little bit, I don't have I don't know what the word is, but skinny, I guess. You know how sometimes with receipting, if you're getting something, you have to deduct the amount of the thing. And so, if someone pays, I don't know, I'm just going to put a just like easy number out there, $125 for a sign, and the sign's $25, are we deducting $25, or are we just kind of chalking that up to the expenses because they're getting something sort of? They're not really.
No, they're getting advertising. So we
Mhm.
go on the ad budget.
Okay.
At least that's the way I think it should be handled. But
Mhm.
things don't always happen the way I think they ought to.
I
Oh,
wonder
Jim.
if like Hail Custom Signs, I don't know if they do, like maybe, because I always hear their ad. I got mine at Hail Custom Signs. So maybe like that's the one, but I don't know if they do those type of signs.
Mhm. Yeah, there is a company that we have ordered through year after year because they've been a good deal, but they may only be a good deal because they're all the same. Do you know what I mean? There might be
Yeah.
another place that does, it's going to be more expensive because we have fewer of the same and more that are different. And, sometimes if you get all of the same, then you get a deal or whatever. So I can look into what that
Yeah,
looks
the
like.
more I'm listening to this, the more I think that this is a logistical nightmare. And think of it from the sponsor's viewpoint. Not only are you asking for money, you're also asking for money for signs.
Mhm.
Or you have to explain yet another thing. So
Well, I think one of the ways to get around sort of the complication of it is, those sponsors at a certain level get their name on a sign or something like that, right? So we're simplifying our own thing. But there might be businesses out there that all they want is a sign or the memorial idea. So we'd have to, sort of make that sort of work. because I love the idea of the memorial signing, and that's a wonderful, feel good, very personal addition, which is, it's that heart piece that I feel like you can never really have enough of. And, maybe there's, this is not going to sound great, but Heartbreak Alley, right? Where we've got the number of signs that people, sponsor in order to remember their loved ones, maybe here, if we're going to do it here, but here by the door or something like that. That is a very special place for that kind of thing. Or we can decide to put them all around, but I love the idea for sure. Okay, moving right along. Okay, so just to put us grounded in our goals for this event, raise funds in support of LifePath programs and services, so across the board. Raise awareness about who we are and what we do. And I loved that we were able to add those LifePath booths in when we were in person, and really have some fun things happen that people could engage with, to be able to educate and promote goodwill toward our agency. So, we do want it to be feel good while raising money and educating. That's easy. Anyone got any problems with that? Good goals, right? Straightforward, what you'd expect. Would you add anything?
Well, I think, as strange as it sounds, I think one of the goals of the Walkathon is to raise awareness of the Walkathon, an annual event.
Okay.
I mean, the we should be LifePath and the Walkathon.
Right. Yeah, I think it's, further to your point, kind of, how do we get people to want to do this year in and year out? And I think that we do have a handful of sponsors who are that demographic or that, and we do have a handful of teams that are that, for us. And honestly, I say, why? And we should ask the question, of those teams that are coming back every year, because it might give us some insight, will definitely give us some insight into how we can recruit,
Why don't you buy a lottery ticket for every person that's on the team? And no, I'm serious. I mean, it's $1 or $2 or whatever the hell it is. And the more team members you have, the more tickets you get, and the more likely it is that one of the people that wins will in fact share with others.
That's interesting. Any thoughts on that?
I always get sucked into 50-50 raffles, and luckily or unluckily, I always win, and I am completely guilted, and I just turn the money over, because how do you not? Because it's always for a good cause. So, I mean, I don't know about lottery tickets, though. I wonder if that might, for people who have like strong beliefs about things, but.
Well, I was just going to say that I just hate
Well,
anything like lottery tickets. I mean, I don't have, it's not founded on any belief.
but maybe linking it to a good cause isn't bad, but I think that it would have to be vetted by an attorney.
But I think, go
I
ahead, Judy.
think people join teams out of for virtuous reasons, not to win lottery tickets.
Of course.
Well, and I think, what I shared with the development committee, I don't know, it's probably a couple of years ago now, but just saying that, 75 or 78% of the people give to LifePath because we asked them. They're responding to an appeal of some sort. And so, you know, I think people who haven't yet formed a team haven't been asked to, you know, and not that we can really go in and expect that every person we're going to ask is going to want to participate in this, because it is a, you know, it's something that some people love to do, you know, ask people to join them and support what they are passionate about and that sort of thing. Their family's doing it, their friends are doing it, the agency means something to them. And others, you know, don't really have a connection to us yet. But I think that, you know, being able to mobilize us to ask, you know, schools and social groups and that sort of thing to really be able to form teams early is going to be one of the things that we can focus on. Because as you maybe saw, can I go back? No. How do I go back? Sorry. Here we go. You can see in these numbers that the teams do just an amazing job, especially during the virtual. You know, they fell off a smidge. No, this year they didn't even fall off. When I say like they are the heart and soul of this event, they are, you know, they are working out there. They are doing and asking and, you know, communicating on our behalf, and are really just making it happen year after year. So, you know, the teams, I just have so much respect for.
So today in the Greenfield Recorder, there was an article, the new director at the senior center, it's either Northfield or Bernardston, I can't remember, started a walking club, you know, to do like easy hikes and then a more difficult hike once a week, you know, so like that's a, you know, perfect place for if they hadn't had a team to get like that mobilized. And I think you may see more people doing that because senior centers have been struggling to try to find a way to get people together. And if they can take a short walk through the town or something like that, they're going to get them. So that may be another impetus to put teams together.
Awesome. And Northfield doesn't have one. Thank you for noticing. And a team, I mean. So that'd be great. And I think we've all had practice being outside and being more active, you know, whether it's on, you know, mountain trails or just, you know, trying to be together with other people and that sort of thing. That can only help our our efforts here, you know. And, you know, I think there have been a couple of new COA directors that have come on board in the last year that may not know that we do this. If, you know, they're new to the area or haven't really been intertwined with LifePath or whatever. So it's a nice introduction for something else they can offer the people they serve or the people we serve, you know.
So I was going to ask the question about how many COAs are already involved, and regardless of how many are involved, it seems like it would make sense to me to go out to those organizations early to try to get them brought into the fold.
Well, I think that was one of the things with Greenfield. I had reached out to Kathy Dunn at one point, and she was like, it's too late for us to get it in the newsletter, you know, because I don't know if they publish monthly or whatever it was, but so the earlier the better, which is one of the goals, you know, the to-do goals, I don't know, this year. But we definitely have activity with South County Senior Center. We have Ethel. We have Bernardston. Nora Bixby is someone who usually comes out in there, you know, representing them.
I just put in the chat that Lynn's meeting with all the councils on aging tomorrow. I could shoot her an email and say, hey, can you do a save the date? And then maybe we could ask Lynn if there's a way that at the present, like the next, I don't know how frequently they do it. I'm not sure if it's quarterly or, but maybe somebody could go and just give a pitch there too.
Yep.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Love it.
Yeah, that is a great idea. And you know, that and going to schools, these are organizations that are stable.
Mhm.
The private teams are not stable, both in terms of numbers and in terms of teams. And maybe, having, promoting to COAs, I think makes an awful lot of sense because they have a vested interest here. But going to schools, I think, has a knock-on effect, and that is that if the school supports this and they try to put together a team of students, parents, whatever the mix is, it goes out to everybody, including the people that don't participate. So it's really a promotional vehicle as well as maybe a vehicle to expand the number of teams.
The other thing I love about it is that, while I think we feel like the majority of what we do is serve those over 65, I think that we will create, awareness to those who are in the sandwich generation. What do we do for caregivers? What are the programs that are available to either someone who may be disabled in your life or an older person in your life? And so, I think it can only help, even if we're talking about being in places where it seems too young for us, kind of a thing. So,
Well, the people that have kids are in the sandwich generation.
exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Like
Yeah.
maybe middle schools, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the idea of going after COAs or schools or organizations that are stable who can put together a team to augment the ad hoc teams that come together.
I think the other thing about it that either schools or other groups could do that already have a certain structure to them is create competition or create whatever it is that they might usually do among themselves, something internally. This just has the external factor to it, but they could use the same. And we could do like a pizza party, or we could do something that would make the kids remember that, like, oh, LifePath, they gave us a pizza party one time. They're awesome. Or, something like that we could kind of work in our favor also.
You really want the parents to be saying that.
Yeah, right. They gave my kid a pizza party. No, just kidding.
And then retirement communities, because, they come out big time for like the walk for the Alzheimer's Association.
What about the Relay for Life? Like, what do those teams look like? And I know that's, cancer is very moving and it touches so many people, and, they have such great participation. But is there anything that any of you know about that we can learn from
having
and
been,
use?
I chaired my team for many, many years, so I know a lot about Relay.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, so there are family teams, and those are probably some of the strongest, but also there are schools that do it. Federal Street always had one. Churches, the Conway Church always had one. So churches are another group that always came out. The track team at the high school ran the track some years 24 hours, maybe every year. I've lost touch the last couple of years during the pandemic, so I don't know. But certainly track teams. I don't know if the women's track, I guess the women's track finally did come one year. There's none of the private schools are involved at all. And that's because it's late in the year too. It's usually the very beginning of June, so many of them are gone. But the family teams are the strongest.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, is there, and this is an internal question, I wonder how we feel about promoting to our caregivers or our consumers, to kind of capture more of that family piece. But
so are you saying we typically don't even ask them if they want to?
We typically use and reuse, lists of people who have been involved. And in many cases, we don't know why they're involved. Sponsors are lists that maybe change a little bit from year to year. And I hope that they change a lot this year. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I love the idea of having more people to help this year, because it does feel like in this 30th year, if we can do a bigger effort in every direction, still while, not losing our sanity, that it deserves that, in a milestone year. So.
I think that's how you can sell it too. And I'm sure that that's what your thought process is. Like, I think of, I'm involved in far too many organizations. The Women's Way, the Community Action, all the different things. And I think looking at the different organizations and who's involved with what, like I think of Franklin First, they always step up big for different things. So I think, I know people sometimes always get like sick of being asked, but then I also think that, there are, like, for example, the banks and the credit unions, they have a certain amount of community stuff that they are required to do.
Mhm.
So, I also think of like Amy Clark, who lives in Greenfield. She's just gotten off of one of the committees that I'm on, and she's personally said to me, hey, I really appreciate LifePath. So for me, I'm thinking, well, now that you've given up this other thing, maybe you should have a team. And she has a huge family. So, I think it's just a matter of getting on board and figuring out who the right person to make the ask is. And Carol, I know like years ago when we first started and we went to Bement, we were like, oh, we're going to go to Deerfield, and then we're going to go to Eaglebrook and Academy of Charlemont, and, just sort of so that it becomes a tradition for them. I think
Mhm.
is really, we want to get that. So, they don't even remember not doing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
That makes sense. I do think there has been a lot of turnover at schools though, but I think we just ask, and the worst thing that they can say is no.
Right.
Maybe it's obvious, but all the people that walk to the fairground, those groups, they should have teams. I mean, we know they walk.
Oh, you mean the parade? Mhm.
Yeah, the parade.
Gotcha.
And the schools all have these, students that are, boarders that they need to have activities for them on weekends. And so, that's a really good source of, having them, work towards some goal, or even, the day of. The biggest thing is, though, all the private schools have like their spring weekend, and it's usually very early May. So there may be conflicts there.
Yeah.
Carol,
Yes.
getting back to the clients. So none of our LifePath clients are notified about the walkathon, because I'm just thinking, I hear from the Meals on Wheels clients day in and day out, if there's anything we can ever do to help, to give back to you. They might not be able to walk, but like one lady said, I can't walk in your walkathon, but boy, I got family and I can get them out there walking.
That's awesome.
So, I do hear that a lot though, from a lot of different clients. So even, I don't know, even memos to families or clients, especially the meals clients who are still pretty active.
Mhm.
They may not walk, but their family members might, if they knew about it.
Well, I always remember there was this man when I used to be very involved with the Alzheimer's walk, and his wife had Alzheimer's. And so the only thing he could do each week or each day was to go out and walk circles in his driveway. So he would do that every day, so many circles, to do fundraising for the Alzheimer's walk. And so, there's like many different ways that it all happens.
Yeah. Well, and I think you bring up a good point, Nancy, about, like, what is the goal? What is the walking part about? And I think a number of years ago, there was a walk 3 miles, there was some kind of measurement that people were kind of aiming for. And that has since kind of like gone by the wayside. But I have had a couple people on the Warwick Walkers team ask me, how far do I have to walk? And I'm kind of like, as far as you want. You can go once around, you can go 18 times around, whatever it is. And then of course there's Linda Ackerman and her buddy who go walk the night before and take a picture and send that to us. So like everyone is doing it a little bit differently, but I feel like there needs to be a little bit more focus on what the walk is or what we're expecting of the walk part. So we can think about that. But Anne, I also wanted to address, I love that you have these offers, and part of me, it feels like there is some protectiveness around our clients and how much we're communicating with them and what it is we're communicating with them. And if they're on our Good Life, communication list, then they would get, 2 or 3 months worth of walkathon stuff, which might be one of the reasons why we don't contact them directly. But, there's a difference between sort of that direct communication. We want you to join us, or we want you to invite people to join us, rather than, hey, we're doing this. How about that? Aren't we great? Because that's kind of what the articles feel more like, rather than an invitation, I think, for someone to do this with us and for us and for them. So that's something else to kind of think about. I want to say it is 2:36 and this hour has totally flown by, and I have you until 3 if you'll have me. And, but what I was hoping, and we've kind of been doing this along the way, is, brainstorming some stuff and thinking about, what we want this event to look like and what we want it to include. I do have a couple more slides that I just wanted to run by you, to just give you that moment of, we have had a little bit of a departure from what people knew when it was Meals on Wheels. So 2020, we made the big decision to move away from the event solely benefiting Meals on Wheels to benefiting all LifePath programs and services. And that was in part because there had been an increase in Meals on Wheels funding and support. And the fact that, if we continued to restrict funding for Meals on Wheels, and it already had enough funding in the moment, that money would just sit there. I mean, that's what restricted monies do. They are determined to be for a certain program or service, and we don't touch it for other things. And so opening this up allows it to be spent on Meals on Wheels, protective services, healthy living, money management, wherever it's needed. So also in that same year, a month later, we had to make the transition from an in-person event to a virtual event. So we were putting out lots of crazy messaging to people, anybody who was listening, about all the changes that were happening in 2020. And people were dealing with their own changes, at that time, and trying to figure out how they were going to stay safe and keep their family safe and all that. And as you know, in 2021, we continued with the virtual event model, and we're aiming for in-person next year. So we kind of went into, sort of the background of that it's been a number of uncommon years that I've been here for the walkathon. And, one day Barbara asked me, she's like, well, can we just look at a regular year? And I'm like, none of them are regular. Like, I wish I could say this is a regular year for you, but we made this change here and we made that change there, and this probably impacted that, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay. So no doubt there'll be changes that impact this year too, but we can hope for the best and the perfect scenario ahead of us. But I did want to ask you all, what events have you taken part in or seen promoted that inspired you? And what might you be willing to take on in this effort? And at the same time, as we move into this 30th year, where are opportunities for us? What elements do we want to keep? What elements do we want to add? What elements do we want to change? What themes do we want to consider? And what approaches do we want to take? That's a lot.
Well, Carol, one of the things we talked about when you and Judy and I just brainstormed this a couple of weeks ago is, to have a couple signature things, like we talked about, like seeing if Moe's Fudge would develop a flavor for us. I mean, it seems like that might be something you want to start sooner rather than later, so that you could, do that for, holiday gifting, and things like that, or to work with Hillside Pizza when they do their fundraising efforts, is strategically think of things to happen periodically leading up to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And one other thing that we had talked about in our little group we were like, oh, could we do concerts ahead of time and sort of, celebrate along the way? And then we turned to maybe, a hillside pizza fundraising or whatever as something that seemed a little bit safer or more manageable or that kind of thing. But like just, throwing everything out there, at this point in the game to just kind of see what sticks, what we might be able to accomplish. And some things are going to have a really short timeline, and other things like May 7th is a much longer timeline, thank goodness. But just, I think doing a variety of things along the way would be great for promotion, recognition, getting people excited, making people feel part of something in the months leading up. Because honestly, I don't understand, and maybe and you could, better speak to this, that do you just feel like you're wafting out there in the wind doing your thing? Or are you feeling, as a team member, as a team captain, are you feeling very much like, oh, I could read this next article and like know what's going on next with the walkathon? Or, like what is the sense? And maybe it's a little different because, you're tethered here in nutrition, but
Yeah, I kind of feel like my team members are out there, especially during COVID. There was no way to I couldn't think of anything to bring them in.
yeah.
So if we did things along the way, I would love to incorporate my team members into events going on or things going on in the whole year.
Mhm.
And I think they'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Because I think the other thing was, if we're feeling kind of safer post event, that maybe after the walkathon, we're still in the 30th year and we get together to celebrate after, with a concert or something like that, but just kind of thinking about things differently because we have to, winter's coming and, COVID, there might be a spike in COVID, there might not be, I don't know, just the uncertainties of putting a lot of effort into something that may or may not be able to be pulled off,
It might even be as simple as, hosting some like 1 mile walks or something, even like the senior centers are doing. Like my sister died of breast cancer, and for many years I've done 3-day 60-mile walks for breast cancer. And so, that's a lot of effort to be able to walk 10 miles a day. So you would see teams get together and they would go do a 5-mile walk just to sort of help you with your training. But, we might just be doing, a walk down Main Street in Old Deerfield or something like that, and, at the end of it, you could have cider and donuts, or you could maybe get a docent from Deerfield to then talk to the group about one of the houses or something, it's something to draw them in. Go to the cemetery in Old Deerfield, whatever.
I like that's a walk related thing too, and
Right.
being, and because one of the ideas that we had too, while we love the ease of being here with all of our supplies and that sort of thing, we had talked at some point about, hosting different walks in different parts of Franklin County on the same day if we didn't want to bring 200 people together in one place, or we couldn't, because there were crowd caps throughout the COVID, the pandemic. And so could, 50 people do it in Greenfield, and 10 people get together in Northfield, and 15 people get together in, in Orange, or, whatever that would look like if we were in that position again as kind of an alternative. But, how are you feeling about being here for the event day and making that a little more special than maybe it was in its first couple of years, walking around a parking lot? There is a trail through the woods, but I know during one windstorm or rainstorm, there were some trees that came down and they blocked the trail, and said, do not, walk the trail.
And there was a liability issue.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one thing for me that having done it, and maybe it was 19, I don't remember what year it was, Carol, but there was things that after we had done it, like, oh, I wish that we had done this. I wish we had moved that. Like, I think that there's a better setup than how we've had it set up. Like, I think that just for parking and stuff, we had talked about maybe using the other entrance. So that there's less, there was a lot of like, you have one in, one out.
Mhm.
That seemed to maybe make more sense. I mean, at this point, I don't have an issue, you know, doing something outside. I think most people are okay with that. I don't know. I don't know how other people feel about that.
Jim?
Carol, I'm going to have to run in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
It seems to me that what's on this slide is a great way to capture what we've been talking about.
Mhm.
And along those lines, why don't we make this a Google Doc that we can all access, we can all edit?
Yep. And I'll add in what it is, you know, we have talked about already.
Yep.
And then we can continue to add. How's
Yep.
that?
So just because I'm the annoying details person, and that's why you love me, Carol,
Totally.
Nancy had said fudge for the holidays. If we're looking at that, the holidays are like tomorrow. So I don't think we can wait a couple of weeks to meet. I
Well,
don't know.
it is something that we can.
I
make
think
a
we
couple
can
phone
find a
calls
way
on.
to explore that pretty quickly and see what goes on. And then, I mean, I know in previous years, I've seen them like if they'll have like a holiday packet, but then, you know, then you just take orders, you know, and then you figure out how to distribute it. But I mean, it seems like that would be a great thing to do. I mean, you get a signature flavor that goes throughout the year. So then you bring it back up around Easter again. And then, you know, you bring it back up closer to the event and maybe even have it to sell at the event by the piece or whatever. So you just keep using that same thing. And, you know, I mean, basically it would be talking to them, like trying to come up with a flavor that would be, you know, non-traditional that they haven't done or something. And, and you could do that flavor, and then you could do mixed packages of their other flavors, you know, and they package it all up and they bring it to you, you know, so it's more about distribution.
All you really want is that for them to call it LifePath fudge.
Right.
You know, what goes into it doesn't matter. What goes around it doesn't matter. But people are buying fudge, and here they're buying it for LifePath, and LifePath gets a cavity from getting a piece of each piece of fudge.
It's going to be blue cotton candy flavor. That's what it's going to be.
I mean, I think that distribution may be the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I think we can only, I mean, personally, I think you can only do it out of the LifePath office and have people come to us. I just can't imagine trying to organize.
You know, but you get the COAs involved or whatever, and they've got to come and pick up what their water is or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it's certainly manageable, you know.
But you also think it would be at LifePath and people would come to get their orders. Is that what you're thinking, Nancy?
I mean, I know that in the past, I mean, you know, kids were selling it, you know, and so somebody, when I worked at Highland Valley, was selling it. And so, you know, they would get their orders for the Girl Scout troop and then they would divide it up. So, I mean, I think you can make it work however you want it to work.
We talked about maybe a Kringle candle too, seeing if we could get Kringle to do a LifePath candle. Maybe we could get them to do a 30th anniversary candle.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to reach out to these couple of places to say, how does this work? You know, is it even possible? You know, we're trying to capitalize on this being our 30th Walkathon. And then go from there. And I can be in touch with the group between
And you
now.
can find out if we're too late or not.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
I mean, maybe we miss Thanksgiving and you just get Christmas, you know, and then Easter or something like that. I mean, I would imagine they'll make it work. You know, they're pretty big on that.
Well, I think also if they think that you're going to provide them with a new audience for their product, that will
Right.
be an excellent, you know, win-win.
I'm not so worried about this holiday season, but if they develop it for the actual Walkathon, then we can reuse it during the holiday season next year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
People will be asking for it. Where
Right.
is that LifePath fudge? I know that the senior center at South County, they do their pop sale around Valentine's Day, and Sue Corey has said people come asking me for them. When are you going to do your pop sale? You know.
yeah, I mean, the broad classification is what sort of premium makes sense. We talked about fudge, we've talked about T-shirts, there are also mugs, things like that.
We talked about pins, right, Judy? That was one of the things that came up.
I forgot.
Yeah. we
Water
did.
bottle if you're walking.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay.
I think the T-shirts are a given, because that's really what you want to give to your walkers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, if we could get a sponsor for a water bottle or whatever, like that could
Right.
make it an easy thing for us to kind of add to either a giveaway or something that we could sell at a low price, or, something, I don't know. But, okay, so I want to be respectful of your time. Yeah. So, but maybe I will send a doodle poll for the 28th of October, 6 o'clock-ish, and maybe the Tuesday has a couple of options.
Well, we leave the fundraising to you, so why don't we leave the calendaring to you?
So what was the Tuesday? Which Tuesday are you talking about?
The 26th?
Yeah, I
I'm
have
just
a
trying to-
4th. I have a
Okay.
4:30 meeting on the 26th.
But will it be done by 6?
Yes, actually it will. I can do, you're right, I can do both.
I have a class till 6:45 every Tuesday.
Okay. So maybe I suggest 7. Are you back by your class by 7, or is that back to back you too much?
That's fine.
So Tuesday the 26th at 7, or Thursday the 28th at 6 are the two couple of doodle poll, and maybe I'll throw one more in there.
Well, do you want to just put back the time on the 1:30 time on the 27th?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that might be a good thing. I mean, because it really seems like we need to meet in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Especially if you have some information about what we need to do, go forward.
Okay, so I'll give those 3 as options. And if it's this crew again, I am so happy. If we add a couple, I'm happy too.
Well,
Okay,
I'm
thanks, Jim.
thrilled that walkers are here, so that makes me feel much better. So
Yeah. Well,
glad you
and
joined.
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I was so glad Anne joined, because I felt like that we needed that.
Absolutely. She's got experience, I think, in all realms,
Right.
walkathon related. So it's awesome. And spirit. I mean,
Yes,
it's
definitely.
amazing. So thank you all for being with us today. I felt like this went by so quick. I hope you did too. And that we got just a lot kind of hammered down, a nice foundation. And I will send a Google Doc so that we all can kind of take a look at the notes that I've taken. Please add anything to it in the categories that are put there. And I'll make the couple of phone calls about Kringle or about fudge, just to kind of get those conversations rolling about how easy those things might be. And we'll go from there.
Do you want to add to that list ideas for sponsors that we don't have, and and places to form teams?
Yeah, that sounds great. And actually, I have a couple of lists going already, so maybe we can just link to those, and then you can add to those. And I've asked Pat Seacard at RSVP if she's been wanting me to give her some work for a couple of volunteers, and so some of it is research on addresses and that kind of stuff.
Two other quick things. Sorry, I know we have to end. So the Fairgrounds is doing that light up thing. I don't know if that's anything anyone would be interested in, and that's probably not the official title of it. It's a drive-through holiday light thing. I'm just wondering if it might be good to get LifePath, something about the 30th. I don't know. Just a thought.
Okay.
And then,
well, if we have a Kringle candle, we could sell those.
It's actually a light display. that they're, you know, so it's supposed to be like a Bright Nights
Right.
kind of
So
thing.
no selling.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's
No.
kind of a inanimate, kind of thing.
All right, one more quick thing, and Carol, you can just answer this if you want. So do we make the final decisions as the committee? Does it need to go to management team? Does it need to go to the board?
That's a good question. I don't know. We have a couple of board members here to be in the know. I think,
I mean,
Barb,
yeah, I think it depends on what it is. I think it's varied based on what it is we're
Okay, fair.
deciding.
and I meet with Barbara weekly. And so, you know, having her ear on updates and that sort of thing on that regular basis, I think, you know, will be helpful to what we do if we do have questions moving forward. So, okay, everybody, thank you so much. I will
Bye,
be
thank
back
you.
in touch shortly.